there in the middle of the woods, where the earth swallows secrets whole. I found her, or what was left of her. Used to be a forensic criminal investigator. It's a fancy way of saying I've hunted clues like chasing ghosts through the bushes, fought to find answers in the quiet, and looked into creepy stuff until it all made sense, like a detective in a movie, but real life. This is the story of Anne Marie, a case that grabbed me tight and wouldn't let go, like a monster from a nightmare holding on with sharp claws. It's about shadows dancing on the edge of what makes sense, a killer who moved like smoke through a storm, and a truth so sharp it still stings me today, like a cut that won't heal. I've been thinking about it for years, going over every minor detail, every moment that made my heart race. This isn't just a murder story. It's like falling into a deep, dark hole, and I'm taking you along for the whole scary trip, step by step, so you can feel it too. It all started on a Tuesday, the kind of day where the sky feels heavy, like a wet blanket covering everything, making it tough to even breathe. My phone rang at 3:17 a.m. A hiker had tripped over something weird in Blackwood Forest, something that didn't belong there. And his voice was all shaky, like he'd seen a ghost. I jumped out of bed, threw on my jacket, and drove there fast, the cold air hitting my face like a slap. When I got there, the sun was just waking up, painting the trees with blood-red light, like the forest was bleeding all around me. That's when I saw her, Anne Marie, lying on the ground, her strings cut by someone really mean. She wasn't moving at all, just still and quiet, like she'd never get up ever again. Her body showed me she'd been hurt very bad, bruises blooming like dark flowers all over her arms and neck. Her eyes stuck wide open, staring at nothing I could see yet, like she was trapped in a scary dream. The air smelled like wet dirt and metal, a smell that wrapped around my chest like a snake, squeezing very tight. I'd seen dead people before, like from car wrecks or fights. This was way different. It felt close, like I knew her, even though we'd never met. It was like the forest itself had turned into a hunter and picked her as its prize. I was standing right then and there where it all went down. At the police station, the case opened up like a puzzle dumped from a box, pieces everywhere, all mixed up, with no picture to show me what to do. Anne Marie was 28, a librarian who smiled so nice it could melt frost, her friends told me. She was the kind of person who loved books, always carried a cup of tea, and walked home the same way after every day when she finished work. She didn't have enemies or a bad past, just a simple life snuffed out like a candle in a big wind. But the clues told me a different story. They kept talking to me. The doctor's report was super scary. Her wrist had marks like the bite of iron chains, red and sore from trying to get free, and her lungs were full of dirt, like the ground tried to swallow her alive while she was still breathing. She died from a hard hit that broke her head like fragile glass, smashing it into little pieces. Whoever did it wasn't just mad. They were like a wild storm, totally out of control, wrecking everything in their way. I started with where she'd been last. People saw her leaving the library at 6 p.m., her red coat bright against the gray fall night. Her red coat bright against the gray fall night, like a light shining in the dark. She took a shortcut through Blackwood, and that choice turned into a trap that caught her tight. I went there myself, my boots sinking into the mud like it wanted me to, and the forest felt alive that night, with branches creaking like old bones and the winds singing a sad song only I could hear. I went there myself, my boots sinking into the mud like it wanted me to, and the forest felt alive that night, with branches creaking like old bones and the wind singing a sad song only I could hear, like it was crying just for her. Days turned into weeks. The case got tough, like it grew thorns that scratched me every time I got close to figuring it out. Then we got lucky. A camera 2 miles from the forest caught a guy hanging around near where Anne Marie walked home every night. Days turned into weeks, and the case got tough, like it grew thorns that scratched me every time I got too close to fight. Days turned into weeks, and the case got tough, like it grew thorns that scratched me every time I got close to figuring it out. Then we got lucky. A camera 2 miles from the forest caught a guy hanging around where Anne Marie walked home every night. Days turned into weeks, and the case got tough, like it grew thorns that scratched me every time I got close to figuring it out. Then we got lucky. A camera 2 miles from the forest caught about a guy hanging around near where Anne Marie walked home every night. He was like a ghost in a hoodie, his face hidden in the dark. He stood like a hunter ready to pounce. We followed the video to a gas station receipt. Someone threw in the trash. His name was Daniel Reese. Guy who moved around a lot. Had a list of bad things he'd done longer than a winter night. Stuff like stealing and fighting. Reese was tall, 6'2", with eyes like storm clouds, full of trouble, dark and mean, and a scratchy voice, like gravel under your shoes when you walk. When we brought him in, he didn't even blink, just sat there smiling like the questioning room was his throne and we were nothing to him, like he was the king of the palette, like he was the king of the place. I don't know any Annie Marie, he said, all cool and calm, but his hands shook a little, giving him away like rats running off a sinking ship. We didn't have strong proof yet, just a feeling that stuck to me like a damp fog, heavy and cold, telling me he was the one. I knew I had to find more to catch him, something big to prove. Forrest was my helper, and I searched it like a kid digging for treasure, checking under every rock and tree I could find. Dirt from Anne Marie's lungs matched the clay deep in Blackwood near an old cabin nobody used, or so we thought. It was a beat-up place, falling apart with spiderwebs hanging in the corners like spooky decorations. I went there one night, all by myself, my flashlights cutting through the dark like a knife, lighting up the path ahead. The cabin sat there in the open, its windows like blind eyes staring at me, creepy and quiet. Inside I found little pieces of her, a red thread from her coat stuck on a nail, blood dots on the floor like spilled wine, tiny signs she'd been there. Then I saw a rusty hammer covered in something dark and awful just sitting in the corner like it was waiting for me to pick it up. My heart beated loud like a war drum as I grabbed, knowing this could catch Reese or end him like a guillotine dropping fast. The lab checked it out. Anne Marie's blood was on it, like her name written there in red. We'd had him for sure now, no questions about it. Reese ran when we came to him, slipping away like water through fingers, disappearing so fast I could barely keep it up. The chase was wild, sirens screaming loud like fire trucks, tires squealing on the road like a car race, my heart thumping like a scared beat in my chest that wouldn't slow down. He headed back to Blackwood, and the forest swallowed him up as a night dropped like a curtain, covering everything in black. I ran after him on foot, the trees closing in like a group ready to decide his fate, their branches grabbing at my jacket, slowing me down. I was breathing hard, my legs tired, but I kept going. I found him at the cabin, hammer in his hands, eyes crazy like a trapped animal with nowhere left to run. You don't get it, he growled, his voice rough like a broken edge, that could cut. She wouldn't stop screaming. She kept yelling, begging me to stop. He jumped at me, swinging the hammer fast, and I shot. He jumped at me, swinging the hammer very fast, and I shot him. 2 bullets right in his chest. Loud bangs that echoed in the dark. He felt like a puppet with its strings cut, blood spreading around him like a dark halo on the dirty floor. The forest got super quiet after that, like it was okay with what I did, like it wanted him gone all along. Before he ran, I tried one more time to make Reese talk about what he did. We brought him in again after finding the hammer and sat him down with the bright lights buzzing loud, the room feeling tight and tense like it was squeezing us all in. I turned on the tape recorder. It hummed like a little bug watching us, and showed him all the proof. Her blood on the hammer, her thread in the cabin, his face on the video from the night, his face on video from that night. It's done, Daniel, I said, trying to sound strong and sure. Tell me why you did it. Tell me what happened to her. He looked at me with those storm cloud eyes, and I thought he'd spilled it all like a dam breaking after rain, letting everything pour out. But he just laughed, a creepy sound that bounced off the walls, and said, "You think you know her? You don't know anything." I kept asking, telling him how she fought and bled, how scared she must have been in the end, but he stayed quiet like a wall I couldn't climb over. He wouldn't give me anything, just stared and grinned like he was in charge. Then we got word he'd escaped, and the chase started. I never got him to say it out loud, but I stopped him anyways. And that had to be enough for me. And that had to be enough for me. And that had to be enough for me. Reese was gone, but the case stuck with me like glue I couldn't peel off no matter how hard I tried to forget it. Anne Marie's family cried at her funeral, and their sadness felt heavy, like a rock I couldn't drop. Reese was gone, but the case stuck with me like glue I couldn't peel off no matter how hard I tried to forget it. Anne Marie's family cried at her funeral, and their sadness felt heavy, like a rock I couldn't drop, sitting right on my heart every time I thought about it. The clues showed Reese followed her for days, watched her walking home, then tricked her into the woods with some lies or scares, and then killed her with the hammer in a big angry fit, swinging it hard until she couldn't fight anymore. But I kept wondering, like echoes in a canyon that wouldn't stop bouncing back. Why her? What made him do it? Was it something she said, or just him being mean for no reason at all? I figured it out. Caught him in the end, but the answers tasted like ash in my mouth. Nasty and gone, fast, leaving me feeling empty inside, like I didn't win anything. I quit being a cop a year later, turned in my badge and walked away from it all, tired of the sadness. Blackwood changed me, made me feel empty like a carved pumpkin with nothing left inside, just a shell. When I close my eyes, I see her there, a flower crushed under a shoe, petals all smashed in the dirt, and I hear the forest saying her name, Anne-Marie, over and over, like it won't ever let me forget what happened that night.